I mean, again, it's amazing how the wheel comes full circle, but we're very excited about the possibilities in the future, and we're looking for your input throughout this conference. And we begin now with a very special speaker. Dr. Archana Hingorani is a founding member and the CEO of IL&FS, which is a major private equity practice in India. It's based in Bombay. And her company invests in companies across multiple asset classes, including growth corporates, infrastructure, and real estate. Her company has made more than 150 investments across various sectors over the past 20 years. It has a greater focus on infrastructure-related investments in India and Asia, though I know you made investments in Africa too. But her company has an aggregate capitalization value in the excess of $15 billion. And she's co-chair of the Investment Commission Board of the United Nations Environmental Program Finance Initiative. She's a member of the SURE Stakeholder Council that's affiliated with the Global Infrastructure Basel Foundation for creating standards for sustainability in infrastructure projects. She's a member of the Advisory Council of Talentnomics. That's an organization focused on mentoring women for leadership positions. She serves on the Advisory Council of the Emerging Markets Private Equity Association. She's a member of the Young Presidents Organization and International Market Assessment of India. She is regularly named to numerous lists associated with the most influential women in finance in India and in Asia. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from St. Xavier's College in Bombay. And just as importantly, she has a master's and a PhD from Katz, and she's even taught at Katz for a couple of years before she returned to India. She receives the Distinguished Alumni Award from Katz this year. So it's with special pleasure that I welcome Archana.
John, you can dim the front lights.
Thank you, Pandu. I'll do that. We should have done that earlier, right?
Yeah.
That's the. Yes, and also have it either way.
Well, good morning, everybody. I think full circle is the right phrase to use for me too. When Professor Camillus asked me to speak at this event, I was scratching my head a bit because I am a practitioner these days as well as an academic, and I was trying to go back to what all we've done over the last 20 years, which sort of connects back to the words frugal engineering, humaneness, etc. And I'd begin by saying that I think that the hypothesis that businesses, when they do use considerations that go beyond ordinary profits, when they do actually use it, you would find that over time it does generate better profits, perhaps more sustainable profits. But I'm also going to use my Milton Friedman training to say that I want to pose some questions at the end of this, which are not a divergence, but I think we need to think about those when, you cannot solely throw that out the window. I don't think all businesses in this world today are meant to go down the sustainability path. Although in my head, that would be the best thing to do, mainstream sustainability into each and every business. I think we have a little bit away from that, but I thought I'd use my experience over the years to figure out what we've done, which sort of allows me to draw parallels to what is being achieved here. So just I have borrowed heavily from the words used by you guys in your BOH, but if you look at it, I thought that reducing costs, especially for emerging markets, developing economies, and of course areas like Homewood, would mean that you need to find alternative forms of technologies that allow you to break down costs and therefore allow you to provide better services. And in that, of course, the best thing to happen, at least from an emerging market perspective, has been disruptive technologies. I mean, if you take the case of India, I don't think you would think about India in the context that you do today, except for the fact that they actually adopted cellular telephony. I think that's probably the basic disruptive technology for India. Had we not done that, I don't think anybody would be talking about us with the same fervor that it does today. I mean, completely transformed people from, not having a 10-year queue for it, standing in queue for 10 years for a landline goes away for people like me who can afford things, but it also allows the vendor and the plumber, etc., to walk around freely and go do his business rather than wait at one corner of a street to figure out who's his next client, which is actually quite compelling from a sustainability, better livelihood standards perspective. And I don't think that was the intent of the corporates who went in to provide cellular telephony, but clearly it was the intent of the government, because there was a clear path which said every cellular telephone company has to provide, it has a universal obligation, which meant it has to go out to each and every corner of the country, which is what has resulted in the great GDP growth that we've seen. And to me, that sort of indicates that if you were to go down the path that is being suggested by people out here, I think that takes you to the next level of growth. I think from my own personal experience, forget about telephony, by the way, we were the first company, a private equity firm in India to ever invest in cellular telephony, so I can speak about it with great passion, because we saw how it changed things. But we do see a trend in many European markets, but including India, about focusing on not just profit. So you do have very many funds that talk about impact, ask you what it means. So you did this investment, tell me about something beyond your return. They do talk about it. In fact, we now have separate department within our private equity practice, which only looks at, makes sure that every investment has all the three parts to it. It has to have environmental checks, social checks, governance checks, even if it is based on profitability. But we also look at special funds that only look at impact. This is the latest one that we're just investing into. This is, I guess, at some level relevant even to economies like the US. We have some technology that's already been reverse engineered. We have had the support of the government. BARC is a government agency which has actually developed the technology. And this is something that I think allows cancer treatment to become much, much more affordable. I've written 2x price points, but actually we've seen that if we were to do a little bit of more engineering, this could drop dramatically. So this is a classic instance, I guess, of frugal engineering, and it allows you to provide the service delivery across different sections of society. The second one I thought was quite interesting. I've dug out examples from our own investments, those 150 ones. We got a contract to do a waste-to-energy plant just outside the city of Delhi. Everybody very excited because this was one of the first ones to come up. We also realized very quickly that we were putting a lot of people out of business because they were using those dump sites to pick value propositions and allow them to sell that in the market and earn a livelihood. To be able to make sure that the project worked from a profitability perspective, we actually went out and created an alternative business format, pulling out it happened that there was flour waste in those dump sites, trained all the people who were rag pickers to become at some level artisans, created the technology, brought in Belgian technology, and created ability to use those dried flowers for, coasters, notepads, annual event offerings from corporates, etc. Now, it's not unintended. There are very many infrastructure companies in India who have realized over the years that if you want to be able to have a sustainable project which is profitable, does not create issues within the communities that you're trying to change, you have to give them alternative forms of living which are better, and once they recognize that, they add to your ability to actually run those projects much more profitably. Had you not done that, if you just go back 15 years when people were, when you're running a new project, you're kind of focused on cost. You're like, if this guy is not happy with you, although he lives next door, maybe you're taking away part of his road. You're not focused on him, and you realize that you took 2 extra years to get that project going because you didn't focus on the sustainability aspect of the people living around in that community. This is very typical to the Indian context, so the words are also Indian. I thought this is the next technology, according to me, which sort of levels the playing field across the nation, be it rural or urban. India has embarked on a project which it's equivalent of a social security card, in the sense that everybody now has an identification card, which the government is utilizing to provide subsidies for populations that are under the poverty line. But it's very important from the fact that you're transforming them through technology. Today India is a 4G compliant country. I mean, you can get 4G across many parts, and you intersperse that with the e-commerce revolution that's happening in India. To me, those are the next levels of growth. Can you imagine a company like Amazon today being out there, walking, trudging along all the rural areas, trying to figure out how to service all these people? Why is that important? It's not just about me being able to get something from the market. I'm a consumer, it's convenient. It's about all of these people be able to access affordable goods. It's not about being urban and having a phone and being able to order online. It's also about accessibility. Whereas these guys, they live so far away, they would have normally never had access to any of these things. John has been mentioning CSR to me, and whether it's good or bad for the country. Again, we as a country embarked on this thought that every corporate has to donate 2% of its profits every year to CSR. CSR is defined very, very broadly, so different people are doing different things. But I think it's very good from a perspective that it allows that initial seed capital to come in, which you need to have those ideas germinate into something more important. Which is, here you're asking the Hillman Foundation or other people to do it. I think at some levels this is that seed capital, to allow new ideas and have them become obviously more socially responsible. And I think once there is power to using words which then sort of become part of your thinking, and then once you say CSR, once you say ESG to people, when they hear it for the first time, there's a lot of resistance. But over time, because it's sort of there in your base consciousness, you start thinking about how to use those effectively, even from a corporate perspective. These are my 2 question mark slides, where I thought I'd bring in my financial training earned in this building. There are obviously a lot of people who get attracted to businesses to be done in different parts, including Africa. From one lens, if you look at it, you'd say, oh, this is socially responsible. But that's not the context by which they have entered those markets. they're looking at it saying, okay, this is my ability to enter that market. If I don't do it, somebody else will do it. So from that perspective, I struggle with the concept that business is not only about being pure business. I have recognized over the years that you can make profits, but I don't see where these two blend together so that there is no distinction. It's not like this is a separate thing and that's a separate box. I'm struggling with how one would get to that level. And this is my other question, which I've been asked a lot, which is, we run infrastructure funds in India. A lot of investors, American, Australian, will tell you, do you do coal plants in India? And the answer is yes. We cannot run on solar and wind. That's not what would drive the nation. And if I was to take away that capacity to provide rural electrification through whatever sources, maybe DC, but coal is an important source of energy for countries like India. And if the money givers of the world decide that, this does not fit and therefore I will not fund you, then what does it say about ability to provide the same kind of services to all parts of society? So that's the only two thoughts I had, which I thought I'd leave on the table because I think that those still remain unanswered in my head from a business of humanity angle. Thank you.